what's up, y'all? It's me here, Michael Franti, and welcome to this week's edition of the Stay Human podcast. I am so excited and just pumped up because, man, not only do I get to be talking to a legend, but somebody who just really influenced my life. So you guys are in for a treat this week. And as always, we want to give a big shout out to Gibson Guitars for sponsoring this show. And my guest is a founding member of the hip hop group, the Sugarhill Gang. I mean, just saying those words, man, Sugarhill Gang is so huge. And he has been penned as one of the godfathers of hip hop, with the first and most popular hip hop single of all time. Not necessarily the first hip hop single, but it was the first to reach the top 40 in 1979. As you know, the song Rapper's Delight. And the Sugarhill Gang revolutionized the music industry with that song, and it affected all music after that. And Rapper's Delight was the first rap song to be played on the radio and TV, and it exposed millions of people to this new and super exciting style of music. At that time, it sold 60,000 units daily in 1979, and today it has over 100 million streams on Spotify alone. So please welcome to the show, Master G from the Sugarhill Gang. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing so. It's just so I've been on fire, man. We talked on your show last night, and I get to hang out with you tonight, man.
I know.
It's just cool.
It's very cool, man.
You know, we had a great talk last night, and we broke down a lot of the history of, you know, Rapper's Delight and Sugarhill Gang and where you guys got going. But I really want to do a deep dive on just you today. You know, okay. Master G. That's really what our show is all about, is getting to know individuals and where they came from. So let's just start at the beginning. Okay. You know, what's your earliest memory in life? Like, where did you come from? What was your house like? Were you raised, your family, your parents?
Well, I was born in a medical center in New York City. So that much I know. 1962, my mom was like 15 years old. So, you know, in 1962, Catholic school girl with a baby, that was kind of really a taboo thing. You know, it's nowhere near like it is now, you know. So there was a lot of controversy surrounded around my birth. And a lot of it had to do with my grandmother was not cool with the pregnancy. So so my mother went through a lot. So my earliest memory is you know, trying to always be connected to my mom, because from what I understand, and this is just like later on finding out, my grandmother was always kind of like taking me from my mom and taking me to people and, you know, having me stay. And then my mother would have to find me and, you know, all these different kind of things. So till I was about 5 years old, and then we kind of settled in Brooklyn. And then that's kind of when I started realizing, you know, I started having like, you know, going out and going to school and that kind of thing. So it was very kind of helter skelter, you know, early on. But
was your dad in the picture?
No, never knew who he was. You know, you know, from what again, my mom, you know, I tried to get information from her early on, and she was kind of like, he was like a hustler cat in, you know, the New York area, and she was a young girl, and, you know, got caught up and. You know, I don't even think I think it might have even been her first time, and, you know, boom, and that kind of thing. Yeah. But I think somewhere along the line, my grandmother and my mom kind of had some sort of reconciliation, because we ended up in Brooklyn and eventually ended up living next door to my grandmother. So we ended up, you know, in that situation. So it was interesting.
So in those early years of your life, was there ever a man in the house? Did your mom have boyfriends, or was there one person who ever became a father figure for you?
Early on, because 5 years after I was born, my sister was born. So there was a male figure there for a brief moment of time. But it was, again, a little tumultuous. So he ended up kind of leaving. What eventually became my first primary father figure was when I was about 7. So my grandparents had like an audio store, like what is Best Buy today is what they had back in the day. So they sold everything, TV, speakers, the whole 9 yards. And my dad was a recording person, and that's how him and my mom met. So he would come to the store. Wow. And they, interacted. One thing led to another, and they ended up getting married. And that's how we left Brooklyn and ended up moving to New Jersey. So, and I was about 7 years old when that happened. So he was kind of like the first father I had. And then he eventually even ended up adopting me. And so my sister was born prior to that. And then my brother was my brother's father. And he adopted my sister and I.
Okay. And, so I don't know how much of the early years that you remember, but did you feel like as a 7-year-old, and now you've got this, this 2-year-old sister who's coming along, and did you feel like you were really responsible for your sister? Was that part of your growing up? Was it like you really got to look out for little sis, and was that part of your childhood?
Yeah, I always I had an immediate bond with my sister. When she was born, it was funny because when she was born, the first time I saw her was in a box in the store. Wow. And they were like, this
in the audio store.
Right. Yeah. So this box came, and in the box was the baby. And of course I was, I was 5, 6 years old, 7 years old. Yeah. So I thought it was real life. I was like, wow.
You thought that's where babies came from.
Yeah. I thought that, hey, this was it. I mean, it was my grandfather's store, and I thought that was the world, because my grandfather was like mine. And as a matter of fact, I digress. My first real, now that I think about it, because Michael, I haven't thought about these things for years, but my grandfather was actually, who happened to be a white guy, which was kind of deep. That's a whole nother situation. But my grandfather was actually my first male positive figure. And, he would take me on trips to Jamaica, and, he showed me how to eat, and, we stayed because he was very successful. So, we had a really good lifestyle, at that point. So he was kind of like my first person. So like the store, one of the things, and I guess I definitely got to get it out, is one of our things was, he had a German Shepherd that was named Tiger. That gave me my love of dogs. And then the other thing is Star Trek. So like we had a ritual that every Sunday night, because that's when Star Trek came on back in the day, he would close the store, and him and I and Tiger and I would, we would watch Star Trek. He was amazing. Wow. I was very, very, very close to my grandfather. And then we moved to Jersey, and, moving on. But my sister, she was very important to me. I remember that. I remember it was very immediate that I felt like, I had to look out for her. I had to be there for her, especially when I knew that her dad had left too. I realized that also,
Yeah. So you're growing up, and there's this audio store. So obviously there's music, there's television, there's entertainment, there's all these things coming at you. Do you remember the early sounds of that time and things that really stuck out for you? And your grandfather being white, was he listening to different kinds of music? Was it culturally a different place that he was coming from?
Well, he was so broad, man. And I always say that all the ingredients in my upbringing have contributed to my abilities to succeed in life. It was just so many different things that he exposed me to, musically, culturally. I think at one time we had a guy from Germany that came and lived with, my grandparents for a while. Wow. My mom drank tea with milk, and, so early on, I still to this day am a tea drinker. I mean, and then of course we're talking about the 60s. So, and the early 70s. So music was phenomenally, present during that time. And then my dad, like I said, he was a recording engineer, so sound was amazing. So when we made the move to New Jersey, him and his dad built a studio in our basement. So music was very, very, very real. He played the trumpet, so he would play the Miles. That's my first experience of Miles Davis, was listening to my dad trying to, repeat what he was doing. And then we used to have people come to the house to do sessions. Like Don Cherry came to the house. Reggie Workman was in the house. I mean, these were people that, they were like, "Hey, how you doing, Mr. Workman? How you doing, Mr. Cherry?" And then I come later, many years later, to find out, like, these guys are
legends,
super legends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were like family friends. They would come and do their thing. And I was like my father's assistant engineer, so I was always connected to and absorbing music vibrations.
Yeah.
And eventually, it got to the point where I even transitioned to playing music.
Right. So as a teenager, that's a volatile time in America. Late 60s, early 70s, that time period. And you're young, you're coming into it, 10, 11, 12. Talk to me about that time, just as you're becoming a teenager. What was school something that was important to you, or was it just like, oh, I got to go to class every day? Or what was your life like as an early teenager?
I had there were very deep traditions. So in the house, it was like helter skelter. There was so many profound things. That's why I say everything that I got as a child gave me the ability to be who I am. There was so many profound things happening, intellectually in my house. So my father was a pilot. So we had a plane, and it was near us. It was a place called Teterboro Airport, which now is like the hip hop, highbrow of, where all the, people go to fly out. General aviation, they had this place called a Millionaire thing. But as a kid, I was raised on that airport. So that would be like one context of my life. But then on the other hand, my father was a very tortured person. So he was extremely violent. So, it was always the dynamic of, I would be, learning the ins and out of a TR6, because he also could like break down a whole car and put it back together on his own. And then on the flip side, hear him and my mom, or he would be extremely violent to me. So that was kind of like the dynamic of my childhood. It was always, I never knew exactly what to do. So what I ended up doing was developing skills for survival. I used to call them my survival skills. So I would mentally kind of go into these different places, just to maintain my sanity. Because my goal, I started creating as a young teenager, I started creating a thought process of, I just got to be able to get old enough to be able to get on my own. And once I get on my own, then I can kind of do what I want to do and live. I won't live this way. You know what I mean? Like I won't be violent in the house and, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so that's all going on as you're a teenager. And what were the things that you were doing to stay away from the house, or to, what were your friends doing? What were the kind of extracurricular things or street things that were happening? Or what were your friends all into?
And again, like I said, man, and this is the thing that I always try to get people to understand. I grew up in the suburbs. It was a very suburban neighborhood, and they were people were very successful people of color there. And then it was very multicultural. So in that environment, everybody played an instrument. That was like the thing. That was like all my friends played, I had a friend that played the guitar. I had another friend that played the keyboards. And by that time I had already started playing the drums. So we would kind of do that, that would be my escape a lot of times. So I used to get a shopping cart from the supermarket. It's a place called Food Town in Teaneck. It's not even there anymore. But I would get the shopping cart from Food Town, load my drums up, and then push my drums to my friend's house. And then I'd set up in the basement, and then we'd jam. And that was, like something we would do. And then I rode my bike a lot. I used to ride and do, it was all about the Evel Knievel was the big deal back in those days. So, we used to have these obstacle courses on our street, and we do jump curves and ramps and that kind of thing. So, again, it wasn't a horrible childhood. It was just a weird childhood, because there was so many, I had great friends, guys on the block. We grew up together. We went to school together. There was a lot of good things happening outside of the house, there was a lot.
Did you think at that time that you're kind of jamming with your friends and you got your shopping cart full of drums? Did you think like, man, someday I'm going to be a drummer in a band and we're going to, we tour around the world? And was that your vision, or was just like, this is just kind of a hobby? This is what we just dig doing. And
it was what we did in the neighborhood, man. I the furthest thing from my mind, because one of the things that I did wrestle with was the self-esteem thing. I really had a hard time believing that, I was one of the, beautiful people, if you will. I don't know how to describe it, but there's a lot of aesthetically good looking people in that part of New Jersey. And it was a dark skin, light skin thing back in those days. And so, it was very, light skinned guys with green eyes kind of thing. And I wasn't one of them kind of guys. And like I said, because of all the stuff I was going through in the house, I was also going through, self-esteem issues there. So I never had lofty dreams. I was always more practical. My thing was, I got to figure out a way to make a living, I didn't really start even thinking about career-wise till I was about 14 or so. Yeah, right around that, because my dad actually wanted me to be a pilot. So I had gotten rated. I had gone to ground school. And again, why I say he was tortured, he was in the Air Force and he wanted to fly, but he was in the Air Force during like the 50s or something like that. And of course, they were giving him a hard time to do that. So once he got out of the service, some kind of way, he figured he was able to, eventually move on. But he also had he was in a bad car accident. So he wore a brace on his leg, and that deterred him during that period of time to be able to even qualify to fly commercial. So his dream was for me to become a commercial pilot. Yeah. And it wasn't my thing. Like, I was flying, which was amazing, like I said, from the age of 7 all the way up. And it was an amazing thing, but I was always doing it because that was like the family thing. And I finally had to come to terms when I started some kind of way. I started DJing, I think, by that time, because my parents had split up when I was 15. My parents split up. And I started DJing. That's kind of when I got hip to DJing. And my dad was kind of like talking to me about flying. And there was a guy in New York named Frankie Crocker. And he actually was somebody that my dad taught how to fly. And he was like the top DJ in New York City. Like, he was the man. And he drove a Rolls Royce, and he dressed really, really beautiful. And he was eloquent.
Are you talking DJ? Are you talking about turntables, or are you talking
radio
about
personality? Radio personality. Okay. Yeah. The DJ wasn't even a hero or a star during those days. The DJ was actually like a backup kind of guy, like an in the shadows kind of person. There was, if anything, with the star, it was the MC or the radio personality, Okay. And so my thing was, I was going to do that. So my dad was cool in respect where he was like, okay, well, if that's what you want to do, then I'll embrace that. So he helped me, like register for the FCC, and I was going to do that. I was aspiring at that point. Now I had got a game plan. Okay, I'm going to finish high school, and, I'm going to pursue broadcasting. That was what my thing was going to be. But by then, as I said, when my mom moved to Hackensack, when they split, I moved to Hackensack, and she had these speakers, and DJing was starting to become a thing in the area. And myself being a little bit of an entrepreneur, I thought like, hey, this would be a cool way to make some extra money, because my mom's trying to raise me and my brother and my sister. And I'm like, I had a little job, and I was like, okay, but now I really figured like I got to bring some money in the house. I got to start taking care of, what needs to be taken care of. So I had the ideal of DJ. So I had a friend in he had a little stereo system, and then I borrowed my mom's living room stereo system, and I started like hustling jobs. Like I would convince girls to throw parties at their house, right, and then make me the DJ. And that's how I started DJing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so do you remember the first time you did it, or just that? What was the first rush, the first moment you got up there and you're like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm getting a response. I'm getting a reaction from the crowd. People are dancing. They're saying my name or whatever it was, or the girls are coming up to me and trying to talk to me. Like, what was that first rush like for you? Do you remember that feeling of like, wow, this is kind of cool?
Well, my aha moment was after I started DJing. And basically, we were just playing music and, playing the popular songs, and we were good. We had the vibe going for the parties. And so we had done a few parties, and we had gotten a little name for ourselves. But my aha moment was I went to another friend's party, and I heard him talking on the music, over the music. Yeah. So I went up to him. I was like, Mark, what is that, man? What were you doing on the music? Because it wasn't really. I noticed that he wasn't just talking. He was kind of like flowing on it. Right. And I was like, that's different. She said, he was an older guy, so he had a little bit more, he had experience on me. And he's like, well, yeah, that's rapping. That's what they're doing over in New Jersey. So I was like, okay, cool. Oh, okay. So I heard the words as poetry. Yeah. I heard the words as rhythms because of being a drummer. And I said, okay, all this really is just rhythmic poetry to the music. And being the person that I am about picking and seeing, I was like, this is okay. In order for me to get gigs, I got to start rapping too, because if not, then Mark will get all the gigs and I won't. So the aha moment is we got a gig in Paterson, New Jersey. So I'm in the backyard of this party in Paterson, New Jersey. And I said, okay, I'm going to drop this rhyme on him. Okay. This is like the first time I got my rhyme together. And so they're dancing, dance to the drummer's beat. I had dance to the drummer's beat playing. And everybody was moving. And I said, okay, I'm going to drop this rhyme. And I had a microphone because my dad had cooked me up. And I started this rhyme, and I start saying this rhyme. And about as soon as I get into the rhyme, everybody turned around and looked at me. And for a second, I got scared. I was like, oh, snap. Because, as a DJ, you don't want to clear the floor. That's like the cardinal sin, And so I said, I didn't stop. I just kept going. I kept going. And the cool thing was, like, they looked at me at first, but they kept dancing. They never stopped dancing. And then they kind of turned around and kept on doing what they was doing. And I was like, okay, this is it. And that was my aha moment. I was like, this works. And then, of course, I went on, and I never did a party without rapping after that part. But that was the first time that I rapped. And
what year was that?
That was 77.
Okay.
78. Yeah, because it was before Rap Was Delight.
I want to put a little context on this for people who are hearing this. Like, up to that point, none of those people in that party had ever heard anybody rap. It's not like today where it's just like there's rap in commercials, there's rap on country albums, there's rap on, they're doing, Broadway shows, with the whole thing is rap, like Hamilton. Like that's not a part of anybody's consciousness. It was like there was no car, and then the next day there was a car.
Literally.
It was like no light bulb. The next day there was a light bulb. It's
literally.
I just want people to understand how influential what you did, and with that, with Rapper's Delight, how it became such a part of the cultural idiom of all art, of all culture. It's not just like, it wasn't just like one little style, like it's really hard. I was talking to my wife today, and I was like, if I had to try to identify what was the first jazz song, there's no way I could do it.
It's
If
so
I had to
difficult,
identify what was the
right?
first rock and roll song, I'd have a really, really hard time doing that.
Yeah.
Uh, but there was a moment with that record that it changed everything. It's like today, it's like the electric car. That's how influential that record became. So let's start to get into that. Tell me about how
Okay.
Sugarhill Gang came to be, how that record came to be,
Okay.
and
So the thing about at that point, I was doing parties and I was getting a good little name for myself. And my mom had kind of moved from Hackensack to another town called Englewood. Okay. So same process. Now I talked to the girls in high school, convinced this girl in high school to throw a party. I started doing parties in Englewood. So now I got a little name for myself in Englewood. I made some friends. And so between the summer of 11th grade and 12th grade, that summer, that's the summer of 79. Okay. I'm on my way back because this is a whole nother setup. My mom hooked up with a guy and he was a weird dude too. And so there was all these quirks. I couldn't use the house phone and he had food that you couldn't eat. And it was just very strange, Well, bless her heart. She did what she could. My mom was a saint. God bless her soul. But she would always find these weird people to be with, just these strange cats. So I was coming home from calling my girlfriend on the payphone with a friend of mine. And I'm walking down this street in our town. And the name of the street's Palisade Avenue. And so there's a car pulled up in front of this pizza parlor, which was our neighborhood pizza parlor. And there's a young guy in it and a woman sitting in the passenger side. And that's all I could see. And I knew of the guy because my friend was a friend with that guy. Now, that guy's name was Joey Robinson and his mother was Sylvia. So I knew of Sylvia because I used to hear about her and see her, she used to drive this yellow Lincoln and we would always know it. And it had Queen Bee on the plate. So we knew that was Sylvia's car.
Yeah.
So my friend stops. We are on the way back. We're walking back. My friend stops to speak to Joey, who's sitting in the car. He says, Joey, man, and I'm standing on the sidewalk. He's at the car. Joey, what are you doing? What's going on? And so Joey's like, well, my mom is looking for some people to rap. And so we heard about, because it was a black guy in the pizza parlor from the Bronx that made pizzas. And we knew about him too, that he was a rapper. He was supposed to be like this big time rapper from the Bronx. And he just happened to make pizzas in our pizza parlor. So we knew him. His name was Hank. We knew his name and he would always be rapping when we went in there, And so she was like, my friend was like, Joey's, we're looking to hear Hank. So my friend Mark was like, oh, you want to hear somebody rap? Oh, no. You got to listen to my guy. My guy's vicious. Yeah. You got to hear him. So Joey was like, oh, okay, well, sure. So he's like, hey, man, they want to hear you rap. So, okay. Because rapping was my thing now. Now that was my power. That was the thing that made me popular at that point. So I had no problem with it. It's like I could do it, like, somebody say, sing, I could, I could do that. So it's like, oh, you want to hear me rap? So I jumped in the back of the car. First time I'd ever really laid eyes on Sylvia, and she's like, oh, he's so cute. Oh, wonderful. I was like, okay, this is good.
And Sylvia, just so people could get a little context about Sylvia, she had been an artist. A huge artist.
Yes.
Very successful.
Very.
Popular artist.
Very popular.
Can you describe her a little bit?
Oh, she was one of the most beautiful women that I'd ever seen. She looked like a queen. She was very stately and she had, she was posh and big diamonds on her. And, it was amazing to see her. Her skin was beautiful. She spoke really nice. You could tell, I'm not. Yeah, but she just oozed machismo. You know what I'm saying? It was like, oh, wow. I was like really blown away when I first laid eyes on her. You know what I mean? And the way she spoke and the whole 9 yards. And so.
And she had this idea that she had seen rapping and the effect it was having in some of the clubs. And she was like, they had a record label and with her husband. And they were like, look, wow.
Yeah.
This is going to be a thing. Like,
and the thing about it, and the thing that I always try to make sure people understand is that she was a virtual musical genius, and she had vision because they were doing doo-wop songs. Okay.
Yeah.
Their flagship group was the Moments. Look at Me, I'm in Love, Love on a Two-Way Street, Girls, for those that don't know who the Moments are. And then they were also doing stuff like jazz, Bobby Blue Bland, Lonnie Youngblood. They had those kind of artists and it was called All Platinum Records back in those days. So they were doing completely nothing near this thing. But when she saw it and she heard it, she's like, this has not been recorded. This is not being recorded. It was her insight to say, we need to get this on record, and that was it. So I got in the back of the car and I opened up, I was doing my thing, and she's like, oh, wow. Okay. But from our understanding, she was looking for one person. So I thought I was in competition with Hank.
Yeah.
So the whole situation ends up, she's like, well, look, you guys come up to my house, and, now I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be this audition, like it's going to be this competition between me and Hank. So we end up riding up to her mansion now. And now this is the next step of this whole evening. I go from walking down the street to our house, and then
at the payphone,
right, to going up the hill, which I knew was the big deal. All the big houses were up the hill, to her beautiful mansion. I mean, she had this long driveway and pulled up, and we went into this house, and it was the first time I'd ever seen sparkle in the ceiling. They were called California ceilings. I don't know if you remember
those.
That. Yeah. But I looked up and the ceiling was sparkling, and I was like, this is incredible. This is like a movie, Yeah. And so we walked into this library, and, this was crazy. I never had nobody's library in somebody's house. I'd never seen anything like that. Yeah. And so by that time, some other people had come up. Unbeknownst to me, Mike was there because he had come up with a person that was affiliated with this whole setup. And there were some girls there. And so the whole thing was, like I said, we're going back and forth, me and Hank, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
So long story short, it was about late. And she's like, well, okay, I'm going to say goodnight and da-da-da-da-da. And right as everybody's kind of like leaving the library, Mike says, Miss Robinson, I know you heard me on a tape, but I had a cold and I really didn't get a chance to, really let you hear me. And so she was very gracious. She was like, okay, I'll listen to you now. And so he just started ripping off and, talking about stuff in the house and what was going on and the whole nine. And he got so excited, he had a little light bit of an asthma attack, because he was, And so after we kind of got past all of that, she was like, you know what? 3 is my favorite number. I'm going to just put the 3 of you together. So here's the flip of the whole situation. When she starts explaining where the studio is that we're supposed to do this recording, it comes to be that my dad had done sessions in the studio. So as a kid, I used to run through the halls of that building because she was like, the studio is the L-shaped building. I was like, wait a minute. Right off of Palisade Avenue? She was like, yeah, right off of Palisade Avenue, the L-shape. I said, oh my God. So I tell her who my dad is. And she's like, of course, we know Dobie, blah, 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 blah. He's a great engineer. Yeah. So I had, again, my life was always leading up to.
Just destined.
Yeah. And then, the rest, of course, is history. We ended up, I think it was the next day or the day after, because between that night and cutting Rap is the Light, I wrote the second rap of Rap is the Light. That the rap about it was 12 o'clock one Friday night, and I was rocking to the beat, feeling all right. That rap was a story about a girl that I had a crush on. Okay. So, and I wrote that rap based on one word that Hank kept saying through the whole time. He kept using the word masterpiece, and I had never used the word masterpiece in a rhyme at that time. Yeah. And I thought that was amazing. I was like, that is
devastating masterpiece.
Right. I was like, that is just a great word for a rhyme. So that's when I came up with my vicious piece called, my vicious rhyme called my masterpiece, my vicious, I came up with that because of Hank. And the story about the white Sassoons was literally about a woman that I had thought was amazing. She came to the table, looked into my eye, turned around, shook my hand. We walked into the room. All the fellas checked out her white Sassoons. White Sassoons with the jeans back in those days.
Yeah.
And then and then the flip to that story is she actually ended up being. Remember I tell you my son's birthday was yesterday? She was my high school sweetheart. That song is about my son's mother.
Wow.
That rap is about my son's mother. And she didn't know it until about maybe 10 years ago. And we were at a function and I had done the performance and we were standing by each other and I looked over and I was like, you know, that rap is about you. And she was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, guys? What are you talking about? I was like, yeah, you remember the white Sassoons you used to wear? And you remember the time at Dale's dance studio that you walked in, you came up to the table when I was rapping and you waved at me? She was like, yeah, I know that. And I was like, that's about you. And she was like, wow. So, yeah.
So then the record gets cut.
Yeah.
And it comes out. And did it go to DJs first? Did it go straight onto the radio? What was Sylvia's plan? How did she, she has this record. It's something brand new. Was she like, we're going to give this a shot? Or did she just really like go, this is it, I'm going all in? Like, what was everybody's mindset before it actually came out? You guys heard it played back and you're like, what were you thinking?
The first time I heard it played back, I was amazed at how I sounded. I didn't realize I sounded. That's how I sound. I had been doing live rapping. So as far as I could tell, it was what I hear like now. You know what I mean? Or basically, I had never not recorded. I had never heard my voice recorded.
Right.
So that was kind of wild. I was like, okay. I didn't think it sounded bad. I just wasn't used to it.
Right.
But the song itself was cool. Mike was amazing. I always thought Mike's voice was like, secretly I call Mike Dick Clark because his voice is so, just so all American, Yeah. So I affectionately call him Dick Clark, but I would never tell him that, but he'll hear me now. Anyway. And then Hank was just such a party rocker, man. His voice was just like, so, if the party was here, Hank could get on and, he'd get on and
you hear that on the record. You hear it,
right.
It just comes in.
Yeah, he's just his voice, man. Whatever the controversy is about Hank as a writer, which he never ever really became a good writer, he was a performer. His voice and his presence was part of the success of Sugarhill Gang to the 10th power, Right. So that was the first thing. I thought the record was going to be popular in the New York metropolitan area. I'm like, okay, at this point, this is finally going to be my opportunity to be popular for real in my neighborhood. I'm thinking, okay, cool. Unbeknownst to me, we cut the record. Everybody was going crazy. Again, I go to the 12th grade. It's to August because we cut it in August.
Yeah.
September starts. Boom, I go back to school. So I'm in school, first couple of weeks, whatever. Joey comes up to the school one day and he says, gee, the record is, phenomenal. It's crazy. It's like, and my gauge, because, I got a small window, is New York City radio, WBLS. That was the radio station. If it played on BLS, I know it was a big deal. I hadn't heard it on BLS. So as far as I was concerned, it wasn't happening. And then the other thing too is this: after we cut the record, okay, literally I went to a party during that summer and I heard a record from a group called Fatback Band. And it was a guy named King Tim III. So I'm at this party. I know that I had cut this Rapper's Delight record. I know I had it cut. Yeah. I'm thinking we're going to be the first ones to get this rap thing out. Right. And I hear this Fatback song and my head just dropped. I was like, damn, man, somebody beat us to it. Yeah. And I'm thinking the King Tim record is going to be the one to
go do it.
Yeah. Right.
To be it. Yeah.
And unbeknownst to me, again, it just, fate was not that way. It wasn't going to end up that way. The record came out. So Joey brings me to the studio. He shows me the trade magazines. Yeah. So I see it in the trades, like in all these other different cities, that it's it's crazy. It's like breaking all over the place. But I'm still not. I don't know anything about a trade magazine. I'm 17 years old, and trade doesn't do anything for me. So they said, okay, come on, we're gonna go to Harlem. We're gonna go to New York, and I want to show you something. So we get down 8th Avenue, we make the turn, going down 125th Street, and as soon as we get on 125th Street, I hear it coming out of a record shop. And back in those days, 125th Street was lined with record shops from one end of the street to the other, both sides. So as I go down the street, I hear it coming out of another record shop. I can hear it coming across the street on the other side, all the way down 125th Street to almost to the river. I'm hearing the record coming out of every record shop, and they finally stopped in front of this one record shop, and they go in and they tell the people they have the guy that made this record. So they bring me in there, and as I'm going in there, there's a guy standing outside. They said the dude, and this is the evening now. They said the dude had been in front of the record shop since 1 o'clock that afternoon, dancing to the record. That's how much it had impacted, it had taken him. Yeah. And at that moment, I was like, wow, this is not something normal. I had never heard a record played like that. And I listened to everything. I was listening to everything during that time. And I was playing everything, and I never heard a record played like that. Yeah. That's when I knew.
I remember when I heard it, it was on KPOP radio in Sacramento, because I grew up in Davis, California. So I heard it on that station. And then the little college station in our town, KDVS, would play the record too. And I was able to go get a copy of the record because they would have like so-and-so promotional copies, and they just put them out in the lobby if they had extra ones, and you could just go grab them for free. And I just remember looking at the cover and seeing that iconic lettering of Sugarhill
Candy Cane
Records, the Candy Cane. Where did the name come from? The Sugarhill Gang.
Yeah. Sylvia was from like a West Indian descent, Caribbean. That's one of the reasons why she was so pretty. That's why her skin was the way it was, and the whole 9 yards. Her sister, which is my son's grandmother, my childhood sweetheart's mom. She's a beautiful woman too. But what happened was they came from the West Indies. They settled in New York, and this is again back in the 30s or the 40s or whatever. And so for Sylvia, Sugarhill in Harlem was a very special place to her, because it was where the aristocratic blacks lived. Sugarhill was upscale. It was high class. Yeah. That's, Bumpy Johnson and, the Madam and all of that other stuff. All the people of power and wealth lived in the Sugarhill district back in the day. So for her, which is, again, to her credit, like I said, she was a regal person. She was very royal. She wanted us to have that kind of she put that on us. And so Sugarhill being the high area and the upscale area, she named us Sugarhill Gang because she wanted us to get that regalness. And it was her ideal to call us Sugarhill Gang, which at first I didn't think was a good name at all.
What kind of name did you want?
I had no clue, but again, always being conscious of my mom, I was like, how is my mom going to feel about me being named a gang? Because I didn't even understand at that point. I didn't know what Sugarhill was about. I didn't even know. So Sugarhill didn't get it. And then all I heard was gang, and I was like, Sugarhill Gang. I was like, damn, my mom's not going to be too cool about me being a part of a gang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we were going to call ourselves like the Platinum Rappers, but that didn't work because Platinum was going through some changes and they didn't want to have no connection to that,
Yeah.
And Treacherous 3, but that was already, didn't know till later on. That was somebody else's name.
It's already taken. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
that was the first record that I memorized all the words to. I mean, I'd sat there and, it's funny. I can't even remember ever, like now when I write a song, I have to work to remember it. Like I write a song and I record it and then I come back to it a couple days later and I don't remember the words, But that song came and I don't ever remember like writing out the words. I just remember listening to the song so many times. And it's a 15-minute song. I
I
mean,
know.
if you asked me to memorize 15 minutes of the Quran or the Bible or the Constitution, like forget it. It would never happen.
Yeah.
But that song was so hypnotic with the rhythm and the way that you guys deliver the words and the story that was behind it is like I could envision the whole thing as it was being told.
Yeah.
And so that's how I would remember it. You know, it's like, oh, here we go, and now we're going to this next part. We're going to this party. We're going, you know, and it really had a profound effect on me as a kid because it made it feel like there was something that, like, I'm not a good singer. I didn't know how to play an instrument, but it made me feel like, man, here's a way I could express myself, like through poetry, through rhythm, through rhyme. And I don't need to have a band. I don't need to have anything. You know, this is something that I can do. And so I think in addition to just the great artistic, like masterpieces you described that it was also something that democratized music in the way that, the computer has today. Now everybody can you don't need to go to the L-shaped studio down the road and pay X amount of thousands of dollars to cut a track.
Right.
You got your laptop, or you could do it into your phone.
Yeah.
So that song really democratized music for the world and for the masses, and especially for people who didn't have access traditionally to those kinds of spaces. Tell me about that. As the song started to grow around the world, how did that affect your life? How did it change?
Yeah, well, the thing is that for my observation of us is that, growing up as a person of color, I wanted to succeed. And, there was always the okay, well, the way to succeed is to go to college, get a good job, or, be a doctor, or be an athlete, or be a comedian, or something of that nature.
Yeah.
When we put that whole other chance into effect, because, and this is the thing that people sometimes don't understand, I had no concept of what a rap star was supposed to even be. My concept of a successful entertainer was Richard Pryor, you know what I mean? Or, Sidney Poitier, that was what I saw. Oh, he's an actor, he's a this, or he's a ball player. Dr. J was my favorite athlete when I was a kid. Okay. Yeah. So me being, this rock star or rap star I didn't get it. And then once
been done.
No, because it hadn't been done. There was nothing for it.
Yeah.
So what started happening is and again, it comes from upbringing, and, Mike came from a pretty good background, and I came from a decent background as far as, how to conduct myself. We were the poster children for this whole new way of being successful, So, it was almost like, I understood that I was successful. I understood that I was famous. I understood that I had money now, and I was out of the day-to-day, and I felt a certain amount of responsibility moving around. I was appearing on television and, all these different things. And so I was doing concerts in arenas. We were performing, in the Philadelphia Spectrum and Norfolk Scope, and
wow.
We were big. We were legitimate. Legitimate artists, and it just started really hitting me that we're really somebody. We're really somebodies, and at that point, that's when I always tell everybody, that's when the Mecca became Sugarhill Records. So, now if I'm a kid in the Bronx, okay, and I'm going through poverty and this and that, but I got my guys and we doing this thing, well, we're going to Jersey and we're going to get us a record deal. Thus, how Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five made it to Sugarhill Records. They came over there because of Wonder Mike, Master G, and Big Bang Hank. That was their reason for coming. They were like, wait a minute, this is our thing. We're the ones that did it. And we need to get some of that shine, because now there was a shine to get. Yeah. Whereas, we weren't even looking at it that way. And the thing about
no blueprint before.
No. And then the thing about the writing and the recording is that, again, because of the childhood, we were well-spoken people, Mike and I, and Hank too. We were educated people, so we understood how to speak. We understood how to present ourselves. We understood how to being in a studio, being around people. We understood how to present ourselves vocally, DJing and rapping. We had that little foundation. And so also the big thing is that there was no video back then. So you didn't write a song thinking, oh, the video is going to be this way. Your job was to write it so that you could see it. So when you were listening to the story about the white Sassoons and the girl came up to the table and you could see that was premeditated. When Mike wrote about, what you hear is not a test. I'm rapping to the beat. Me, my group, that was all premeditated for you to be able to like, oh, okay. So when I'm hearing it on the radio, I'm actually seeing it. That was how we wrote. And even to this day, I still write that way.
Yeah. It's just an amazing thing to think about, just when you're talking about how there was just nobody before. And then now here we've gone so far. So talk to me about your impressions of the journey that all this music has taken, and rapping has taken, and hip hop culture has taken, and how it's become so international. How does that make you feel, or what are your observations on where it is today?
It took me many, 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 many years to feel it, because it got so far away from me. Like I early on, it was, I could handle it. It was us. It was Curtis, it was Flash, the Furious, and then, Houdini, and then it was, Run, and I could still handle it. I was like, okay, but by the time the 90s hit and then the 2000, it just got away from me. I was like, I can't get it. I can't grasp it. And I really started feeling like I had been like absorbed and pushed away. It was like so meteoric, the level of success that it continued. And it's like, even to this day, it's like a nuclear bomb. It just keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. I mean, and it's more and more and more. I mean, we're talking about people that are in my form of music that are billionaires, you know what I mean? That making companies and selling them to, major corporations, and all of this is their foundation is the same thing as mine. I just couldn't get it, man. And so I was having a very a hard time accepting my presence or my participation in it for a long time. And literally to the point where actually, between 1985 and 2005, I was not a part of the group or part of music, anything. I had literally walked away from the whole thing. I just couldn't. I didn't like what was going on, business wise, and opportunities for me were not there. Like you grow to see like a person like Ice Cube and a person that LL Cool J, who's because they went into movies and film, and there was no opportunities like that for us, and I was working to get into those. I was going on auditions and I was really trying to broaden that horizon, but they just rap was so not accepted in my time for the other side. And like you said, now, so my thing was, okay, I'm just going to reinvent myself, at the point where we weren't putting out any records. We weren't touring. I was like, I'm just going to go reinvent myself. And I found a business, and I was very successful in that business. And the business, and that's part of why I'm even here today. that business is what gave me the foundation to be able to sustain myself long enough for me to be ready to accept this whole thing all over again. And had I been in a situation where, let's say, maybe I had to go get a 9 to 5, I would have never made it. You know what I mean? My mind wouldn't have been able to grasp, doing
What was
that.
the business that you started?
I actually became a part of a direct door-to-door sales company. I knocked on doors and sold books and magazines for 3 years, from one end of the United States to the other. Yeah, I completely I went underground. And so I found this business, and it was a guy, and I've been so fortunate. The guy was aspiring to help people of color start their own business. So I worked for this guy as a salesman at first. And then I became like a field supervisor where I managed people that went out in the field. Yeah. And at the end of that period, he had a deal that if you could show him you could save $10,000, he would take 5 people out of his organization and you could start your own. And that's what I did. So I started a company with 5 people, and I built that sales organization to 50-something people. Then there was a deal where you started taking the same thing that he did, I started doing. So I started taking 5 people and starting this guy. And then I took another 5 people and I started that guy. Wow. And then, so I built that whole situation up to a certain point. Now, the same guy had a customer service company that he serviced all of the orders from the field. And eventually he wanted to sell that business also. So me and a group of guys got together and ended up buying his business. So the same guy that I started out being given like a $7 per diem to, right? I ended up being this guy's neighbor.
Wow.
Yeah. I bought a house.
That's an amazing story into itself.
Yeah.
You like, as you're telling, I'm sitting there going, man, he started rap, and then he also started like the book sales thing, which is basically Amazon. So you started rap and you started Amazon.
Something like that. But yeah. So.
Man, it's been awesome to talk to you, and I feel like we could just go on and go on.
Yeah, man.
And but I just want to say thank you. I mean, I told you this yesterday. Thank you so much for what you've brought to me in my life personally as an artist, and made me think that there was a dream of being able to tell stories to people.
And you do it so well.
And I really appreciate that. I've got one final question, which is the same question we ask everybody on the show, which is, what does it mean to you to be human, and how do you stay human? How do you hold on to it?
Yeah. Human, man, to me is to understand the blessings, man, that you have. It doesn't matter whether you're, a big success musically or whatever, like just your blessings, understanding your blessings, your ability to be able to spread joy when you can, man, or your ability to be able to just absorb somebody's, whatever they got going on, or, that chance. That chance just to make it better. That to me is so important, man. I every day I work to try to give love and spread love. You know what I mean? I've been on a very serious journey where I loved life. I hated life. I was in a dark place. I found the light again, and part of me finding the light is to always make sure that I'm giving out good vibrations, man. And I'm making sure that people understand, one, that I'm going to give what I'm getting, and then 2, that I am thankful for what I have been given. So yeah, that's it for me.
Well, I hope that for the remainder of your life, you really feel the ripples that the gift that you brought to the world has brought to so many, I mean, talking billions of people. And I mean, there are very few people throughout history who can say that what they've done reached billions of people, but what you have really, really has. And so, again, thank you so much.
You.
I just want to give a big shout out to Master G, to Wonder Mike, to Big Bang Hank, to Sylvia Robinson, to your pops, to everybody along the way who helped this journey become part of this historic art form that has, like you said, just continued to grow, and there's just no stopping it. It's reaching every aspect of
I
culture
never
and
in my
society and art, and it's, man, I just feel, like I'm talking to the, Leonardo or Donatello or Da
crazy.
Vinci, one of these people,
It's crazy.
So yeah, so thanks a lot. Are you on social media? Can folks follow
Yeah,
you?
so I've kind of delved into it. So I got the Instagram, and
Okay.
I think it's the Real Master G on there. It should be there, and then we have the Sugarhill Gang Instagram thing, and then of course we got the podcast. We're doing our thing too, Sugarhill Gang podcast, and you can find us on all the platforms, Spotify and all that other cool stuff, and then look for us back out, man. When this thing gets done and the life, we're out too. We're like you, man. That's where we go. We're on the road. So as soon as this thing clears and we get to all go, we're gonna be up and running. So we'll be everywhere.
We got to do some shows together, man.
Absolutely, man.
All right, so everybody who's out there, follow Master G, follow the Sugarhill Gang. Look out for them out on the road, and I mean, there's very few opportunities in life that you get to go experience a living legend. So make sure you go and check out their live show. And as always, we want to say thank you for Gibson Guitars for sponsoring this week's edition of Stay Human Podcast. Peace.